Hellsing920, and it's time for an epic rant. Tonight's epic rant is sort of a follow-up of sorts, because recently I did a rant on movie remakes, and I was saying a lot of really harsh things about exactly how lazy Hollywood is when it comes to remaking old films instead of coming up with something original. And since then, I've gotten a ton of requests from people who wanted me to do one on sequels. So yes, this rant is a sequel to my rant on remakes, and this sequel is about me bitching about poorly made sequels. Except, well, this time, the budget's gotten a little bit higher for me. Yeah, so at least I'm not, amongst the guilty. First of all, folks, I'm going to say this, not every sequel sucks. There have been a lot of really good sequels. And I could just sit up here and name them off, but that would get a little bit dull and tedious and boring, and plus there are some sequels that I personally enjoy that others think sucked horribly. So I'm not going to bore you with that. However, there are a handful of sequels that are complete and total shit, and they really should never have been made. First of all, folks, I'm going to say this. Sequels are okay if the story actually has somewhere to go. If you can actually further the current story, have fun with it. Example, in Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, which is a sequel to a movie barely anybody fucking knows of, but it's one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, just to mention, they actually took off from the first movie. You follow a character who you meet in the first film who was greatly impacted. And you see how the events of the first film affected them in the sequel. But then the next 3 sequels in the series have almost nothing to do with the first 2. They were basically just, cash-ins trying to work off of a name that at the time was extremely notorious for being a controversial film. So, yes, that's one really good example. A lot of people would cite Halloween 3 as another really horrible sequel. However, I have to go against that, because Halloween 3 actually followed exactly what John Carpenter wanted to do with the Halloween franchise. He didn't want it to be based solely on Michael Myers. He wanted it to be sort of like an annual event, an annual or a biannual event, roughly, where he would put out a film, a horror film, where the one big, where the one huge connecting factor is that it's set during Halloween. But since everyone pitched a fucking shit fit when this thing came out, which, by the way, this movie's actually really good, and it's my favorite in the entire fucking Halloween franchise, to be honest with you. People bitched because it didn't feature the guy in the William Shatner mask. Fuck him. Anyway, so they then had to churn out a ton of been there, done that, carbon copy sequels that just got worse and worse with each passing film. Now, that's really a thing, folks, is when it comes to horror franchises, sequels come in great abundance. And there are times when the sequels can be really shitty, and then there's times when the sequels can be actually pretty good. Example, my favorite horror franchise at the moment is the Hellraiser films. The first 4 are really good, and then the second 4 are everywhere from average to poor. None of them actually directly flat out suck, but some of them they could have been a ton better. All right. But of course, that second cluster of 4 were basically, forced out there to attempt to keep the franchise alive, even though people stopped really giving a shit around Part 3. Another series that I actually kind of enjoy is the Saw series. I've only gotten to see the first 4. I haven't gotten to see Saw 5 yet, but these are actually sequels done right. They actually are continuing with the trend of the previous films. The stories all in some way, shape, or form connect, and it's actually entertaining, and it's written well. And then we look at the biggest criminal when it comes to poorly made sequels, direct-to-video sequels. These usually come from Disney, even though Disney swore up and down that they would fucking stop. They have since started up again. with a couple of really god-awful sequels and prequels that really should never have been made. And there's also 2 other franchises that are fucking guilty of just churning out a mountain of sequels. One of them is a gem from my childhood. I grew up on The Land Before Time. That film kicked ass. It was a great movie. Legendary film. Kicked ass. But now, there's a mountain of sequels. All of them direct-to-video. All of them poorly made. Most of them shitty fucking musicals. And they should never have been made. At this point, around, let's say, like, part 5, they should just have said, fuck it, and create an animated series. And they did, around part 14 or so. But nobody watches it because it's a piece of shit. It actually makes the movies look good. That's saying a lot when you think about it. Another really guilty party when it comes to sequels is Scooby-Doo. You see, folks, Scooby-Doo originally was just a handful of television specials, and I'm just talking about the movies. They started off as just like television specials. Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf, which is one of my all-time favorites. And then, around the time of the release of the first live-action movie, they began to just pump out these shitty fucking direct-to-video sequels. There are so fucking many that it just makes me wonder, who the fuck is actually financing this shit, and who the hell is dumb enough to buy it? Because I honestly think that kids are a little bit more intelligent than to enjoy half of this crap. But folks, sequels, just in general, similar to remakes, are just Hollywood's excuse to just go and rehash something without actually putting any fucking effort into them at all. Alright? In other words, folks, sequels really have to go unless they're fucking important. Not every sequel has the same awesome impacting power as The Godfather Part 2. Most of them actually resemble more of The Godfather Part 3. But then again, that's because, well, The Godfather Part 3 was also forced and rushed out too. So folks, I really don't know what else to really say. Sequels can be good as long as they're written well. Unfortunately, most of them suck because, well, they are written for shit. The acting is pitiful. Special effects usually suck. There is just so many issues, folks, which come with sequels because they try to make sequels to these huge films with smaller and smaller budgets. Which means that they can't do as much as the original film. So, yeah. Folks, if you really do want good movies to come forth, you have to really avoid sequels and remakes and prequels and all this other stupid shit. Believe me, folks, I actually could have been talking about prequels, but it then would have been about 10 minutes of me bitching about how much the Star Wars prequels were complete pieces of shit that were doing nothing but giving George Lucas more fucking money that he hasn't fucking earned. So, the less said about that, the better. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this installment of the Epic Rant. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you all in the near future. Peace.